All right, y'all, let's talk about it. Did you attend the 2025 memorial for this year? Well, quite a few people did. Now, as to whether or not this is going to be the largest memorial that Jehovah's Witnesses have ever held, only time will tell. In a few months, we'll get all the reports from all the branches around the world. But it was kind of interesting that a number of Kingdom Halls, the attendance was a little light. We can simply assume and give them credit that maybe all those folks were simply staying home watching the memorial over Zoom. They realized that they came to the Kingdom Hall, the emblems were going to go straight past them anyway. So they figured maybe we'll just stay at home and watch it on Zoom. We recently did a video where we mentioned that with this upcoming memorial for 2025, it had like a different vibe to it. And so as we talked to different people from around the world and contacts and information that we came across and people discussing different things about the memorial, it was like a lot of people just noticed something just was different. Well, what was it? Well, we just kept thinking, what is different about the memorial this year? And you know what we realized? One of the things that's different about this memorial is the fact of how they will treat people who have been removed, yes, disfellowshipped.
You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Now, historically, the elders have always been the only people who could contact somebody who was removed or disfellowshipped to discuss anything of a spiritual nature. Well, because the Watchtower got in trouble with Norway, they ended up having to change their doctrines, and their doctrines they changed was how a disfellowshipped or removed person is treated. They were now able to actually speak to people and at least say hello and a little brief conversation about coming to the meetings or it's good to see you at the meetings. Well, unlike before, just the elders being able to contact people, now every single member of the congregation was free to contact people who were removed. And you know what? A lot of people who had been removed for many, many years were getting a ton of phone calls. You know, it's really kind of sad because, you see, many of these people who have been removed for years. And so these people have been living in what you could call emotional isolation, carrying around a level of guilt that many of us cannot imagine. We've had the chance to talk to people who would simply say, look, I lost Jehovah's favor. I know I'm going to die at Armageddon. So why not? I'm just going to live my life the way I want to. And we've often told people, have you had the opportunity to take a look at what this organization is all about? And you will be surprised just how many people have been removed over the years who have never taken one moment to dig into this organization. Because once you start digging into this organization's background and its teachings and critically examining these things, asking critical questions, you will find out what so many of us found out. Everything that glitters is not gold. Some people have mentioned that they've gotten almost a dozen phone calls from folks they haven't heard from in 30 years. Why? Because now they're permitted to call people, contact people. In some congregations, they were sharing the contact list as if they were working in a sales office. One group of elders had asked the ministerial service, here's a list of people who've been removed. Since you can give them a call them up and see if you can encourage them to come to the memorial. You know, oftentimes when the Watchtower comes up with new rules, like they have in the case of how to deal with people who have been removed from the congregation, they oftentimes forget to include all the protocols that a person needs to apply. For example, at one Kingdom Hall, a person who hadn't been there in decades came into the hall. After a while, a number of people recognized him. So he had almost a half a dozen people who were standing in line just to say hello. And of course, what is the human tendency to do? Well, the person who reached out his hand and said, it's good to see you, Brother Davis. And the witness right beside him corrected him. We can't call him a brother. And so now this man turns back around and apologizes to the person. I'm sorry, I can't call you a brother. You see, when you come up with these types of ridiculous teachings and doctrines, it makes circumstances so awkward for people who are just trying to be nice. These individuals have been spiritually starved and emotionally neglected, and now they're simply getting nothing more that amounts to but crumbs of attention. The very thing that Jehovah's Witnesses often preach against, a lack of compassion. One of Jehovah's Witnesses will be quick to tell you, a sign of no affection is one of the signs of the last days. Is it not amazing that this is a religion that has the ability to fail to show natural feeling to other people? It reminds us of the young lady in the video where it was showing parents how to treat your removed children. She made a very powerful statement about just being able to hear the voice of her family.
I tried to contact them. I just wanted to talk and to hear their voice. I missed being with my family. And they thought about reaching out to me. But they knew that if they had associated with me, even a little, just to check on me, that small dose of association might have satisfied me.
Did you notice what she said? Just the hearing of her family's voice would have given her hope that maybe we can be her family again. It's really sad. This organization trains people to ignore their own parental instincts. Can you imagine parents carrying them around on their shoulders as well? When you talk to people who treated their family like this and then they come to realize this is not the truth, the feeling of like, I can't believe I was carrying on like that. But what about those who have never taken the opportunity since they have been removed to examine this religion? What about those kind of people? Well, we only can imagine that here you have a person who has not heard the voices of people he considered his friends for 20 years. He hasn't heard his cousin and others. And now they're calling him up, letting him know, hey, come to the memorial this weekend. Can you imagine Sister O calling up someone and telling them, I was your first householder when you gave your first talk. Can you come to the memorial this weekend? Can you imagine how that just tugs on people's hearts? Of course it does. If it was not for the fact of the change, or the fact of this lawsuit, these people would not be calling them. Another thing about this year's memorial is the sheer number of people who are PIMOs, who will be attending, physically in and mentally out, but they're there. Many of these people are simply at this memorial to maintain peace with their family. We had the opportunity to talk to a number of persons who said, I'll be going this year just to keep them quiet. And so therefore, this audience is not people who want to be there. They prefer to be at home, but they're there to maintain peace in their families. The memorial was much like watching a play where you already know how it ends. It's as if they're trapped in plain sight. They're wearing a little uniform, but their mind is already free. And you can only feel for people who find themselves in this situation, where they simply have to put a smile on their face and keep going until their circumstances are such where they can leave. But there was a lot of other things that happened, which is kind of funny. Some interesting things. One of the things I remember so much about the memorial as a kid is it was a chance to get new clothes. And Jehovah's Witnesses today, they're still doing the same thing. In fact, we heard the experience of these two sisters who walked into the Kingdom Hall sporting their Easter Sunday hats. You have to ask, how long have those sisters been waiting for the opportunity to sport an Easter Sunday hat? Yep, it turned into a runway instead of a religious event. I'm sure it must have felt like people were getting dressed up for their group chat pictures. And as people relate the different experiences, some of them are just out there. But I think what some were doing with the bread and wine was interesting. Sometimes when you hear what people were doing at the memorial, all you can do is shake your head. For example, there were people who took the bread and wine and they used it as studio props, taking selfies with the emblems as if they're tourists. It has gone from this solemn occasion to literally a mockery. Of course, no night at the memorial would be complete without going to the restaurants. As a kid, we were heading to Golden Corral. You see, Jehovah's Witnesses are oftentimes starved from social connections and social activities. And the memorial being its biggest night, this provides, once again, an opportunity to have some type of social contact. Individually, a lot of people may get together, but the vast majority of Jehovah's Witnesses, they have very little social contact as a group. So the memorial for 2025 had a different vibe somewhat. And whether the numbers go up or numbers go down, they will still use it to say, this is proof that we are Jehovah's people. This has been JT.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.